Well, at least one is in green. Anthony Harris is going to be a starting safety. They brought him back to be a starting safety. I would think that if you were betting at the Ocean Casino right now, I would bet on Marcus Epps being the starting safety. Now, like John was saying, Howie Roseman is opportunistic, right? I mean, he didn't go into the offseason saying James Bradbury is going to be their starting cornerback. But after the draft, when they had a need and they had cap space, they were well positioned to do so. I keep bringing up 2017. They saw what their corners were during training camp. They went and they traded for Ronald Darby. I think the Eagles are going to give Marcus Epps a chance to win this job.
You got your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, joined by one of the best. He covers the Eagles day in and day out for The Athletic. Always good to talk to him. And he's got a collared shirt on. No tie, but a collared shirt. We appreciate that. Well-dressed Zach Berman joins us here on Birds 365. How's your summer going, ZB?
Hey, it's going great with the heavy hitters this morning, so had to get dressed up, right? Happy to be on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Zach. A big week for the Eagles, at least, and obviously before the lull, we get the OTAs. We've talked about it a little bit with you, the scale back and the OTA work, and this year even more when you think about team drills, no team drills, it's 7-on-7s, according to Nick Sirianni. Just sort of thought process with the organization as a whole, because I think it's more than Nick, sort of this cost benefit analysis, the staying as healthy as possible while also preparing. Where do you think the Eagles have fallen league wide with this? Do you think they're kind of ahead of the curve? They typically tend to be there in these types of situations. And you look at last season and people point, well, they look great week 1 in Atlanta, but then it was 2-5 to start. So we have some data, so to speak, in this argument. Where do you kind of see the Eagles in this thought process?
Well, there's certainly outliers around the league. When you look at the fact that they're not taking their full allotment of OTAs, they're not even holding mandatory minicamp, they're not doing 11-on-11s like you said. Nick Sirianni very much believes in fundamental work and in individual work, and there's validity to that. I don't think the lack of OTAs, the lack of mandatory minicamp will have a material effect on the season. If there's anyone it affects, it frankly affects players 40 to 90 on the roster, if you will. The guys who probably won't get, or I shouldn't say probably, won't get as many full team reps during the season. They're on scout team during the season, and this is really a chance for them to get a lot of the work. For the players that your viewers really care about, this won't affect them, and it'll frankly help them, and it'll go over well with them. I've never met a football coach who doesn't want to have more practice time, right? The flip side is, I don't overstate this. I think back to 2017, this time of the year, Nick Foles was out in California, I believe, with his wife was preparing to give birth. During the training camp period, he did not really participate. He was nursing an injury, and we really didn't know what Foles was going into that year. And he turns out to be the Super Bowl MVP, right? So he did not need the offseason program. It's different player by player. There are benefits, but I don't think if they play well in September, it's because they didn't have OTAs. And if they play poorly in September, it's not because of OTAs either.
All right, so you're not putting much emphasis. I guess I'm putting a little bit more, but that's why we like varying opinions. All right, need your opinion on this. I got to give credit to my partner, John McMullen, because this time last year on Birds 365, I continue to ask him, are the Eagles going to go in with these two cornerbacks to start the season? And Johnny Mac said, there's still time, Jody. They can add another cornerback. They're going to get another cornerback. And I'm waiting. And we waited and waited and waited. And in July, Steven Nelson finally got done. So kudos to Howie Roseman. And John had confidence. Are the Eagles' two starting safeties not practicing in OTAs this week? Are they on the roster? Are they in green yet? Or will there be another starting caliber safety added to the mix before the Eagles kick off this season?
Well, at least one is in green. Anthony Harris is going to be a starting safety. They brought him back to be a starting safety. I would think that if you were betting at the Ocean Casino right now, I would bet on Marcus Epps being the starting safety. Now, like John was saying, Howie Roseman is opportunistic, right? I mean, he didn't go into the offseason saying James Bradbury is going to be their starting cornerback. But after the draft, when they had a need and they had cap space, they were well positioned to do so. I keep bringing up 2017. They saw what their corners were during training camp. They went and they traded for Ronald Darby. I think the Eagles are going to give Marcus Epps a chance to win this job. If there is concern there, or if Harris goes down with an injury, the Eagles could trade for safety. I wouldn't rule out, a team that has a surplus, whether it's Baltimore with Chuck Clark or something like that, for them to be opportunistic. But I don't think they have designs right now to make a major splash at safety. I think they'll see what's out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I kind of compare it to the cornerback situation, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Zach, because every time a microphone showed up, the Eagles were really high on Zach McPherson and Tay Gowan and Kerry Vincent Jr. And all of a sudden, James Bradbury becomes available. He becomes an Eagle. People forget Jimmy Moreland is here as well. They picked him up off waivers. So obviously, it's that old adage of don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. I do get a feeling they value Marcus Epps more than the outside world thinks they do. Am I wrong or right on that?
No, you are correct. They think Marcus Epps in this system has more value than probably the outside world does. Now, I will say this, going into the offseason, I think they viewed upgrading at safety more of a priority than upgrading at cornerback. I do think they were genuine in what they were saying about those second-year corners. The James Bradbury thing, that was them being opportunistic, like I said. I mean, if you look at what they did, they went hard after Marcus Williams. They liked Marcus Williams quite a bit. They didn't go into free agency prioritizing cornerback. It just so happened that a corner was there that they liked, and the price was, and the price was right. So they do like those second year corners, but I think they're intrigued by Marcus Epps, and I think that given the way they want to play defense, Jonathan Gannon has certain requirements, if you will, for safety, and Epps fills them. But make no mistake, they went into this offseason thinking about making a splash at safety, and they would still do one if the right player was there.
All right, Zach, we discussed this in hour number one. I need your point of view on this one, and I'll frame it a little bit differently than I did in hour one. This from the hope for the best, prepare for the worst page. How bad would Jalen Hurts have to be replaced by Gardner Minshew as the Eagles starting quarterback this year?
It would have to be disastrous for that to happen, right? Like the season would have to be in peril. Jalen Hurts has a very, very long leash on this job. It would really surprise me if he is replaced for performance reasons at any point this season. I think they are committed to giving Jalen Hurts a chance to win this job. And it would have to be so obvious, not just to all of us, but to them, for them to make a move.
Yeah, it would have to be Carson-like when Jalen took over. It would have to be that level of performance before they would even think about. And hey, go back to last year, Zach, when Jalen gets hurt against the Giants and Gardner shows up against the Jets, and everybody says it's the Jets, but he played really, really well in that game. Mm-hmm. And he knocked on Nick Sirianni's door and said, "Hey, what do I got to do to be the starter of this team?" And Nick basically said, no, it's not an option. Jalen Hurts is our starter. So I'm with you. There's no way he's losing this job from a performance standpoint. But I do look long term, and I do think people don't understand how quickly the decision is coming long term, because when 2 million a year turns into 30 plus million a year, that to me is the real decision. The Eagles to me are fine with paying Jalen Hurts for the level that he played at last season, which was pretty good. Pro Bowl alternate, made the playoffs. But for 30 plus million, that's where they want the Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson or that type of talented player. If you're going to get into that range of the salary, does that decision have to be made after this season? Because he's got 1 year left on his contract still, but despite the work ethic, despite the fact that Jalen Hurts has never been a diva, he's going to have people in his ear if he plays well again. He's got an agent. He's going to say, you deserve this. Look at what so-and-so's making. Do the Eagles have to make that decision after this season because of the finances more than anything else?
I don't think they need to. I mean, I think frankly it will be a good outcome for the Eagles if they're in a position where that's even a debate. But no, I mean, given the fact that there's a franchise tag available to them, they don't need to make that decision. They can kick the can down the road one more year. Now, I don't think you want to be in a situation where your quarterback is playing on the tag year in, year, or I shouldn't say year in, year out, for a year, for 2 years, like Washington had with Kirk Cousins a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
So but I think the possibility of the tag, the low cost of his salary, they're not forced to make that decision going into year 4 unless he forces the issue. That said, I think more of the question is whether they view next year as a chance to act. If they seek an upgrade, or if they commit to him again. If they commit to him again, I think that is that's fairly telling that he's someone they truly believe they can build around, because with the assets they have next year, they're going to have the opportunity again. If they want to draft a quarterback, if they want to trade for a quarterback, they're going to have the chance to do that. And you don't have that chance every year.
I'd have to start this question with the prerequisite assuming health qualifier. Assuming everyone being healthy, which with some of these guys that may be a bit of a stretch, but assuming everyone's healthy, if you've got 4 or 5 guys, I think 5 would be the max you could do, who would be potential starting right guards for the Philadelphia Eagles, give us the percentage of who's the opening day starter. And oh, by the way, the Eagles have not been a kind of team that has used guys to jump in for a couple of plays like you rotate on the defensive line. They don't rotate on the offensive line. Guys stay healthy. They stay in for the entire year. Turn back the clock to 2017 when they kept the guys together on the field for the entire season and went ahead and won a Super Bowl. Put those guys who are potentially, I don't really think it's a competition. I'm a big Isaac fan. But those who do believe there will be a competition at right guard, run him down for his percentage-wise as who's going to start for the Eagles.
I would say Isaac Seumalo at 60%, Jack Driscoll at 35%, Cam Jurgens at 5%.
Wow. All right.
I think it's Isaac's job to lose. I think Jack Driscoll, they're very intrigued by, and you can make the argument that he's the better option, both short-term and long-term. But I think they also see value in Driscoll as a versatile sixth lineman, and he would really need to force the issue. He would need to be better than Isaac this summer to be the starter. I think given the experience Isaac has, given the respect that he has in that room, he'll have the chance to win that job. It would really surprise me if it's Cam Jurgens, right? Like I don't think it's going to be Cam Jurgens, but I think they're going to prepare him because he could have a game day role that if there's an injury, he could slide over. So I think they'll prepare him for that. Other than the competition's really between Seumalo and Driscoll. I think Sua Opeta is more of a left guard at this point. And so I would think either Isaac or Jack for that spot. And I would make Isaac the heavy favorite.
If Driscoll was to win the job, Zach, similar to last year when it was Andre Dillard versus Jordan Mailata, and they went back and forth each day, and it became pretty clear that Jordan was lapping Andre. Then he got injured, and the rest is history. If Jack just goes in there and seizes the job, not necessarily that Isaac played that poorly, it's just that Jack Driscoll plays that well. A lot of people said because of Isaac's salary, he can't be a backup. Um, does his versatility, though, play into that? Because this is a guy who can play everywhere. He
Yeah.
played right tackle as a rookie. He can play center. Stout would say that's maybe his best position long term when he first started. Obviously, he's played left guard. He can play every position on the offensive line. Does that help him?
Absolutely. And that's a good point. And frankly, John, behind the scenes, there was a point, trying to get my years right here, either 2016 or 2017, when the Eagles kind of thought that Isaac's best long term, his future would be as that versatile sixth guy who can step in at any point in a game and play multiple spots. There was a thought that's the best way to use him. In particular, in 2017 when he lost that job to Wisniewski, right?
Wisniewski,
Yeah. So no, I don't think his contract at this point in the year is prohibitive for him to be a backup. I mean, certainly, I don't think there would be an extension, after this year if he's the backup. But if he's your sixth guy, that's fine. And I think they would. I think they would frankly welcome that. When you look at the history of injuries on the offensive line, it's good to have someone who's that versatile. I still think he gets the chance to start.
I'll give you another offensive line hypothetical. Isaac wins the right guard position, which is what I believe is going to happen. So Driscoll is a key backup. Week 2, Lane Johnson goes down. Do they just plug Driscoll in, or do they think about doing what they did at times last year, flipping Mailata over to the right side and plugging Andre Dillard in at left? Which scenario is more likely?
That's a really good question, Jody. I would think Driscoll at right tackle in that spot. You paid Jordan. Now you paid Jordan last year too, but I think he should be settled in on the left side. Andre Dillard, he's still somebody who, if there is an injury somewhere else in training camp, Andre Dillard would be a valuable trade piece. He's in the last year of his deal. Now the complication is the Eagles really don't have a backup left tackle if they traded Andre Dillard. You're probably looking then at LaRaven Clark as your option. So you're counting on Jordan to stay healthy. And I know last year, for instance, around the trade deadline, the Eagles really valued having quality depth on the offensive line, maybe more so than that draft pick. But with a full training camp, maybe to develop a backup left tackle or to see what you have there, I think it's probably more likely that the Eagles could use Dillard as a trade chip than move Jordan Mailata to right tackle just to get by for a week or 2 or 3.
It is June 1st, Zach, and you're well versed on all the intricacies, and there are a lot of them when it comes to the NFL calendar. This is a somewhat of a big day, not as big as it once was, but already the Eagles get a little more salary cap relief with Fletcher Cox when they reworked his deal, Brandon Brooks' retirement, a few other things. But how big is that day? Does this make things easier to maybe make some of those moves you're talking about, whether it's guys leaving, Andre Dillard, Jalen Reagor potentially on the trade market, or guys coming back? A lot of people, we talked about safety, a lot of pie in the sky hopes for a Jesse Bates or somebody of that nature. The Eagles wouldn't have had the room on May 31st for Jesse Bates. Now they have the room, because if you trade, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's got to sign his franchise tender. You got to make that trade. You got to fit him under your cap. Then you can work out the extension. So even if it's 10 seconds and you have the extension, you got to be able to fit that original deal under the cap. So how much more malleable does June 1st make things for the Eagles?
Yeah, they certainly have more flexibility now. I mean, they've been anticipating this and preparing for it. It's not like Jake Rosenberg and Bryce Johnston woke up this morning, put their hands in their pocket, and found $20, right? They knew this was coming, and so I would say that yeah, they have the flexibility if they want to make a move. Obviously, Jesse Bates is the biggest name out there. It would surprise me a bit, given what it would cost in terms of trade compensation, and then in terms of salary, and given the fact that the Bengals were in the Super Bowl last year. But the Bengals can be very tough in these contract negotiations, as we've seen historically. I know the Eagles like to have a buffer for in-season injuries, number one, and carryover money, number two. Right? That's something that's important to them. They don't want to be tight against the cap going into the offseason, right? They want to have some of that carryover money. So and they want to be nimble. I keep using the word opportunistic. They traded for Golden Tate in 2018. They traded for Jay in 2017. They want to be in position that if it's Halloween and they're a contender, they can go out and make a trade. So yeah, I think you always leave the door open for an exceptional player, and I think Jesse Bates is an exceptional player. But I think more than likely this money is used as insurance money than as, all right, go get him money.
All right, Zach, which of the Eagles' 2020 mid-round draft picks will unfortunately have inactive typed in after his name more often this year? Kayvon Wallace or Davion Taylor?
Well, given the depth charts right now, I would have to say Davion Taylor, right? Because the Eagles are thin at safety depth. I mean, Kayvon Wallace goes into the year, it's him or Jared Maiden or I guess Andre Chachere too, as your number three safety. So I think it's more likely Davion Taylor is inactive because the Eagles run, five deep already at linebacker. And Sean Bradley's certainly going to be up for special teams. Now they like Davion Taylor for special teams, and Michael Clay's been using more linebackers on special teams. So I'm thinking out loud here, but of the two, I'd probably say Davion Taylor because of the linebacker depth relative to the safety depth.
All right, Zach. Hopefully, we're going to get to see some 7-on-7s later this week. So, what are you most intrigued by? How Nick Sirianni's going to work in the receivers in that third, sort of Quez Watkins, Zach Pascal, how much opportunity is Jalen Reagor going to get versus how Jonathan Gannon's going to handle things on the back end. Specifically for me, who's going to be those coverage linebackers? Is it going to be, because we all have this mentality of TJ Edwards, who I think is the most underrated player on this football team. I really do. But he can't run, right? He can't cover. The Eagles went out and they signed Kaiser White. They drafted Nakobe Dean. How do you think linebacker shakes out? More, not in a traditional 4-3, but more in a nickel or a dime situation?
Well, it depends who the matchup is, right? And I think it's every week you're going to be talking about this being a matchup defense. I think Jonathan Gannon is going to want a defense that's flexible to the opponent. So there are going to be weeks when it's going to be maybe a heavier TJ Edwards week. There are going to be weeks when you want Kaiser White and Nakobe Dean on the field. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think they have a Darius Leonard in that linebacker group right now. You hope Nakobe Dean can become that player, right? But I think what they're going to have is more flexibility there, and I don't think we'll get any answers in the 7-on-7 period. I think more telling will be what happens at corner and what happens at receiver and how Jalen Hurts plays. I want to see the different combinations that they have in the secondary. Right. I mean, I want to see when they have, let's say they're playing dime. Who's that fourth corner? There are different combinations like that intrigue me. The linebacker competition is fascinating, but I think we'll get more of those answers come training camp than during OTAs.
All right, Zach, last one from me. You guys, when I say you guys, you, John, all you other very good Eagle beat reporters are over at practice on Friday for grass time, and you're in your large group. And sure enough, Nick Sirianni walks over to you guys and says, I think you guys have probably picked up on this, but we're skimmed back because we're protecting ourselves. We don't want to see people get hurt, so we're doing a little bit less, but it's working for us. But unfortunately, Aaron Sipas has kind of hurt a hamstring. We need one of you guys to volunteer to punt for us because we don't want to put any of our other players at risk. So who out of the beat brigade would, number one, be the first to volunteer and say, yeah, I'll punt? And number two, who would be the best to go out there and do their best Aaron Sipas imitation?
So I would go Jimmy Kempski would be the first one to raise his hand. Right? And then Kempski or Elliott Shore Parks. They were the best during the field goal competition a few years ago. So I would have to give those two the edge. That's a good one. Punting's a harder one, right?
Yeah.
Now we're talking about quarterback, receiver. I think we probably have more offensive linemen than anything else in the group, right?
Yeah, I'm in that category.
I'm probably more of the Darren Sproles type out there. So, no, that's a really good question. I would probably go Kempski or Elliott.
Yeah, okay. I would go Kempski. Elliott's more of a field goal kicker size.
There you go.
There we go. At Z Berm, follow him on Twitter, theathletic.com. Best in the business. Subscribe there, Zach. I guess I'll leave you with a real football question. And that has to deal with Jalen Reagor because, Jalen's had some, obviously people know the on-field issue, but the off-the-field issues and the fact that he missed the first few days of training camp last year when one of his childhood friends died. Now his teammate was tragically killed in an auto accident from TCU when he was back in college, and Jeff Gladney. Do you think Jalen Reagor is going to get an opportunity to compete with the Quez Watkins and Zach Pascals of the world on the offense, or do you think the Eagles have quietly turned the page sort of behind the scenes?
It's a good question. And yeah, I mean, it's tragic what has happened to obviously Jeff Gladney and Jalen Reagor's human. He's dealing with things that go beyond football there. From a football perspective, I think there is a pretty well-established top three here. I think A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins are your top three. I think the Eagles look at Zach Pascal as one of the best number 4, number 5 receivers, right? He's versatile. He can play multiple spots in the offense. He can help on special teams. So he's going to be on the team. How does Jalen Reagor take to being the number 4, number 5 receiver? I think that was one of the I don't want to say issues, but when they were leaving at the end of the year, I think one of the messages to Jalen Reagor is how do you react when you're not the top guy, when you're not getting 8-10 touches a game, right? I think Jalen Reagor could be moved. It would make sense if it's our underperforming first round pick for your underperforming first round pick type trade. You've seen those types of deals in the past. That's how the Bills got Jerry Hughes, right? And Jerry Hughes turned into a really good player there. So I think it could happen that he is elsewhere next season. I don't know if I would say the Eagles have turned the page, but I don't think the Eagles are building an offense or a game plan around Jalen Reagor.
Z Berm, always a pleasure. Whenever you come aboard, you let an insight. We appreciate that. If you do get called upon to punt for the Eagles during practice, I expect you to step up and compete. Hey, it's competition. You want to win over Sirianni, go out there and compete against Kempsey.
I would tell Nick that if you're calling on me to punt, go for it on 4th down.
Which he doesn't have a problem doing anyway. Zach, good stuff. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it, buddy.
Thank
we'll
you.
Get you back up in a couple of weeks.
You got it.
Zach Berman of The Athletic, outstanding Eagle beat reporter here with us on Birds 365. All right, Jody Mac, coming back. You know what we got to do? put a bow on today's show.